December 1st, 1948, 6:30 in the morning. A couple walking along Somertoon Park Beach in Unlit, Australia, noticed a man leaning against the seawall. His head rested against the stone. His legs were crossed. A half-smoked cigarette sat on his collar, unlit as if someone had placed it there after he'd stopped breathing. He looked like he was sleeping. He wasn't. And when police searched his body, they found no wallet, no identification, and every label, every single one, had been cut from his clothes. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Today, a dead man, a scrap of Persian poetry, and a code that hasn't been broken in nearly 80 years. Somertoon Park sits along the coast south of Unlit, a quiet stretch of sand and seawall where families came to swim in the Australian summer heat. The man on the beach wore an American-tailored jacket, a knitted pullover and polished shoes, the kind of shoes with pointed toe wear, consistent with someone who danced or wore boots. His hands were soft, no calluses, no signs of manual labor. Police ran his fingerprints through every database available in 1948. Australian, British, American. Nothing, no match anywhere. They published his photograph in newspapers across Australia and internationally. No one came forward. No missing persons report matched his description. A well-dressed man in his early 40s, 5'11", grey eyes, fair hair with a reddish tinge. And apparently no one in the world was looking for him. The autopsy made things stranger. His organs showed signs consistent with poisoning. An enlarged spleen, congestion in the liver and brain, but no specific poison was identified. The pathologist concluded he'd likely died from a toxic substance that left no chemical trace, which narrowed the possibilities to a handful of rare compounds. The coroner recorded the cause of death as failure of heart action. Not exactly an answer. Witnesses came forward who'd seen the man the night before. A couple on the beach watched him raise his right arm, then let it drop limply to his side. They'd assumed he was drunk. They kept walking. Somewhere between that limp gesture and 6:30 the next morning, the man on Somertoon Park Beach died, and nobody noticed. In 1948, Australia was still recovering from the war. Unlit was a modest city, a place where most people knew their neighbours, where a stranger stood out. That's what made this so unsettling. Not just that no one knew who he was, but that no one seemed to be missing him. Micro cliffhanger 1. And then, months after his death, a mortician found something police had missed entirely. The man's trousers had a small fob pocket, the kind originally designed for pocket watches. It had been overlooked during the initial examination. Inside it, rolled tightly, was a tiny scrap of paper. 2 printed words, "Ta-mam should." The phrase is Persian. It means it is over, or more literally, it is finished. The words had been torn from the final page of a book. The Rubai Art of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poetry from the 11th century. The Rubai Art is about fate, mortality, and the fleeting nature of life. Its final verse ends with those 2 words. Someone had torn the ending from a book about endings and placed it in a dead man's pocket. Police launched a public appeal. Does anyone have a copy of the Rubai Art with the final page torn out? Months passed. Then a man came forward. He said he'd found a copy of the book in the back seat of his unlocked car, parked near Somertoon Beach, around the time of the death. He hadn't thought anything of it until he saw the newspaper appeal. The book was a specific edition, a 1941 Whitcroft translation, extremely uncommon, and on the inside back cover, detectives found faint pencil indentations, a local phone number, another number, and 5 lines of capital letters, seemingly random, arranged in rows. It looked like a code. The Rubai Art of Omar Khayyam was, in 1948, the kind of book you'd find on the nightstand of intellectuals, poets, and, as it would turn out, spies. During the Second World War, intelligence operatives from multiple countries used editions of the Rubai Art as one-time cipher pads. It was popular enough to be inconspicuous, poetic enough to justify carrying. Micro cliffhanger 2. The phone number on the back cover belonged to a woman. And when police found her, she reacted in a way that changed the entire investigation. The number traced to a nurse named Jessica Thompson, known as Jo. She lived in Somertown, less than half a mile from where the body was found. When detectives brought her in, they showed her a plaster cast of the dead man's face. According to the police report, she became visibly distressed. She seemed on the verge of fainting, but she denied knowing him. She said she had no idea who he was or why her phone number was in his book. There was a complication. Jo Thompson owned a copy of the Rubai art, and she'd given it to a former acquaintance, an army lieutenant named Alf Boxall. Detectives tracked Boxall down. He was alive, well, and still had his copy of the book. Intact, final page included. So the dead man's book wasn't Boxall's, which meant there was another copy, another connection, and another thread police couldn't pull. Meanwhile, at A.D. Unlit railway station, investigators found a brown suitcase checked in on the day before the body was discovered. Inside, a stenciling kit, scissors, a knife, thread, and wax, the kind of tools used for forgery or espionage tradecraft. More clothes with the labels removed, and a jacket with the name T. Keane on the tag. One of the few labels that hadn't been cut out, possibly a planted alias. By the early 1950s, two broad theories had emerged, and they've never been resolved. The first, espionage. A.D. Unlit in 1948 was no backwater. The Woomera rocket range was being established nearby. British nuclear testing at Maralinga would begin within a decade. The Cold War was ramping up and Australia was a theatre. The suitcase contents, stenciling tools, the removed labels, the coded message, fit the profile of an intelligence operative. According to this theory, the man was either an agent who'd been killed or one who'd taken his own life after a mission went wrong. Supporters point to the unidentifiable poison, a signature of espionage services that used compounds designed to evade toxicology. The second theory, a personal tragedy. A man arrives in A.D. Unlit, goes to the beach near the home of a woman he knows, possibly loves. He carries a book of poetry about mortality. He tears out the final words, "It is over," and puts them in his pocket. He dies, possibly by his own hand. The code on the back cover might be nothing more than personal notes or a love letter in shorthand. Jo Thompson's fear, in this reading, wasn't about espionage. It was about grief, or guilt. Both theories account for the evidence. Neither explains all of it. Micro cliffhanger 3. But the story didn't end in 1948. Decades later, Jo Thompson's daughter made a claim that reopened everything. Jo Thompson never publicly wavered from her denial. She said she didn't know the dead man. She maintained that story for the rest of her life. But after her death in 2007, her daughter Kate told researchers that her mother had confided something she'd never told police. She knew exactly who the Somertown man was. She knew his identity, and she refused, to her dying breath, to reveal it. Kate Thompson said her mother had been involved in intelligence work during the war, that the man on the beach was known to her, and that the secret was too dangerous to share. In 2022, a geneticist named Derek Abbott, who had married Kate Thompson, announced that DNA analysis had identified the Somertown man as Carl Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker born in 1905 in Melbourne. Webb had vanished from public records in the 1940s. His family had no idea what happened to him, but South Australia police have never confirmed the identification. The case remains officially unsolved. And the code, those 5 lines of letters penciled into the back of the Rubai art, has never been broken. Military cryptographers from multiple countries attempted it. Cold War codebreakers worked on it. In 2009, a team of computer scientists ran statistical analyses and concluded the letters did not appear to be random. They had structure, pattern, internal logic. Whoever wrote them was communicating something. But to whom and what, no one knows. One line was crossed out and rewritten, suggesting the author was composing in real time, not copying from a reference. It's the kind of detail that suggests meaning, purpose. 78 years later, a dead man on a beach in A.D. Unlit still hasn't told us who he was. A woman took his name to her grave, And a code in the back of a poetry book sits in a police evidence room. 5 lines of letters that might be the most personal message ever written, or the coldest piece of spycraft, and no one alive can tell the difference. There's something about this case that goes beyond the usual unsolved mystery. It's not just that we don't know who he was, it's that someone, maybe the man himself, maybe someone who knew him, went to extraordinary lengths to make sure we never would. The labels, the untraceable poison, the coded message, every clue in this case is also a wall. Every answer opens into another locked room. Maybe Carl Webb walked onto that beach with a book of poetry and a broken heart. Maybe an operative was silenced near a nuclear testing corridor. Or maybe, and this is the part that stays with you, those two explanations aren't as different as they sound. People keep secrets for the same reasons, whether they're spies or lovers. Because some truths, once spoken, can't be taken back. Jo Thom-sun understood that. She carried the answer for 60 years and chose silence. The Summer Toon man carried 2 words in his pocket. It is over. Whatever it was, love, duty, a life lived under a name that wasn't his, it ended on that beach. And the rest is still unlit. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. Follow the Unlit Room wherever you listen. Tell a friend, but maybe don't tell them it's all real until after they've finished. Full story on the main channel. Follow if you're wide awake. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.